record. My computer, my computer's getting full up, which is another scary thing. I've actually still got your notes beside me here. Oh, look, we
Oh,
can go
really?
live. We can go live. We can do it now. Oh,
Um,
where's it gone? Oh no, I just had the page open and I saw it. Oh no, I've just had it. What did I press? Okay, where's the go live now button? Okay, there, right there it is. Oh, thank you, thank you. Okay, woohoo! I've done it. I've pressed go live now. We are live. Yay! So it's such an honor and a privilege to have Jorie Houlihan here um, in this Facebook group tonight. Welcome, Jorie.
Thank you. I am feeling honored to be asked to be here. So I'm very excited.
So let me introduce you. Um, I saw what you wrote. I put it in the event thing that you said that you're a slightly sweaty ADHD mum. I was like, okay, we put it in there.
Slightly sweary.
Is that what it was? Sweary?
Yeah, sweary.
Oh, excellent. Yes, I
Exactly. Yeah,
love
yeah, I guess occasionally sweaty too. But yeah, no, I swear probably more than I should.
that. Okay, I wonder what I wrote. I wonder if I wrote, I think I copied it, so it should say sweary. That's
I hope it's
awesome.
sweary.
Yeah, no, funny because I was listening to this entrepreneur yesterday talking about when you sweat, when it's really important, it brings on a sweat. So yeah, anyway, so this is Jorie Houlihan, and Jorie is, they keep wanting to say ADHD expert, and then that's such a big word, but so I put educator on the event, but so an experienced person with ADHD who
That's
helps
what I would say. Yes.
yeah, who
Yeah.
helps other
There's so
people.
much to learn. Even I think the experts, the medical doctors, the psychiatrists, they're all still learning. They're doing so much research into it now in a way that I think they haven't in the past. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's just there's so much that comes up now that's new information that it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, choosing to be call yourself an expert is a big thing, but it kept popping into my head. So, yeah, but Jory has basically we are on the similar entrepreneurial journey as such. We have the same coach, and
Hmm.
and basically, I joined Jory's Facebook group, and I had a couple of it felt major realizations about myself that made me feel better about myself, and have incorporated a language that when this group is free your true voice, right? And in order for us to express who we are, it helps to know who we are, and that's what I've learned when with the couple of tips that you gave me have helped me, and actually with my daughter, they helped me with my daughter as well, to know myself a little bit better, and to feel more comfortable with what I thought was just wrong, and now I
Hmm.
see is just not functioning in the I think I'm trying to find the right words. I can probably explain it a little better. Is just where I thought, oh, I'm terrible at this. It was like, well, actually, I have this block around this, and that's very different and we talk about that a lot with the language. Like when you say I'm terrible at, it's like derogatory language. But if I say I have a block around this, then it doesn't make me a bad person, and that's what I've witnessed just from the experience with you, Jory. And we have at least one person who features regularly in this group who has also pointed out some of her traits since she's discovered in her adult life that she has ADHD. And there are loads of people in my world around me that keep discovering that they have ADHD, and I'm still teetering on whether to go for a diagnosis as well. And so it's just such a pleasure to have somebody who, and I actually shared your masterclass, Jorie, in this group that was last week,
Yeah,
running earlier than mine. I was at yours was at
yeah.
6:30 my time, and mine was at 8:30 and or 6, and so I got to go to one, and I got so many tips from you. I've got my little piece of paper here, and I even shared, yeah. So welcome.
Thank you.
I feel so privileged, and I'm also feel privileged for the people who might get to witness this video, and um, so yeah. So tell me about when you discovered that you had ADHD.
So the first time I spoke to a doctor about it, and I didn't call it ADHD, I just said I'm really struggling with focus, etc. I was 19 and I'd been struggling with it my entire life. But as I was getting older and executive functioning was becoming more of an issue, so like time management, prioritizing, organizing, all that kind of stuff, especially with education, I was really, really struggling. And I was pretty much dismissed, oh, you're in college now, you're fine. And I brought it up again on and off over the next several years, and I was just always dismissed. And so about 10 years before I was actually diagnosed, I sort of gave up. Honestly, I was just like, all right, well, maybe I just don't adult well. I don't know. And but I really started to go down this kind of, I just got very, honestly, a little scary for me, because I kept looking at my life and thinking, is this it? This is all I'm capable of? I always thought I would do so much more with my life, and I can never get started, or I never follow through on things, and I'm just so lazy, and all the stuff we have a tendency to say about ourselves. And one day I was joking around with a friend of mine, and at that point I'd known her probably about 3 or 4 years. And I said, oh, so sorry, I think I have ADHD or something like that. And she stops me and she says, actually, I think you do. And I think it's why you struggle so much. And I think you're always going to flounder until you get this figured out. And it turns out she had ADHD. She was also diagnosed late. And so she had just been watching me just, in the soup. I was just drowning. And so she convinced me to try one more time to get assessed. And I finally was. And then I got my diagnosis. And that was right before I turned 50. So from 19 to 49.
Oh
So,
wow. Oh
yeah.
wow. Oh wow. I'm just before 50, funnily enough, thinking about whether to get a diagnosis. Oh wow. 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 And so your friend, she'd got her diagnosis.
Yeah, she had gotten her diagnosis. She's about 7 or 8 years older than me. And she was diagnosed, I think, right before she turned 40. And so she just saw all the signs, right? And she just wasn't sure how to bring it up. And she would kind of hint around at it and stuff. But this was just her like, we need to talk about this, kind of thing. And I will be eternally grateful to her for like having the courage to tell me that.
Yeah.
And and she also called me like 4 months later after the diagnosis to say, you haven't started medication yet, have you? And I was like, wait, yeah, nothing's really changed. And so, medication is such a personal thing. And I'm never going to be that person that's like, oh, you should do medication or you shouldn't. But for me, it absolutely ended up being a game changer for me. And I probably would have still been hesitating if she had not had the courage to call me and say, look, just try. Like, if it doesn't work for you, then you'll know. But she goes, I really think it's going to help you. And it did. So, and then with my own coaching training and my, one of the reasons that I started doing what I do is because when I was going through this, there wasn't anything out there that like was like a clear path to this is how you deal with this. And because to find out that you have this as an adult, on one hand, like it explains your entire life to you. You know, I was like, oh my gosh, so much about my life makes sense now. But then at the same time, I kind of felt like I don't really know who I am now. And so yeah, so that's how I kind of ended up getting into this. Was I finally kind of figure out a really good path, and I don't want other women going through that. We've gone through enough not getting caught young with it. And I want people to get the help that they need as quick as they can. So, and I like to educate people on what to look for, because our daughters, our nieces, our friends' kids, they're still being missed all the time. And
Okay.
so,
There, you see, our group is a unisex group, and I was wondering when I was posting whether some of the guys would go, oh, what about me? And I missed your second masterclass, but you gave a rundown on the third day, and you said it was different for women than men, like the traits, or I don't know what you said exactly, but can we just pause a sec, because Eugene
yeah.
is here, and she's in the Facebook group, and she says, look, I was diagnosed at 42 and got my diagnosis, and it has revolutionized my life. Knowing how my brain works helped me get a 2-1. Oh, that gives me tingles. Bachelor of
Love
Arts.
it.
And then a distinction at master's level. It's helped me so much. Explains so much. Love this. Oh, wow.
Oh, oh, that makes me so happy.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, I mean, when I think about, I mean, one of the reasons I bring up how women and girls are missed is because I think about how much we have how much we have hated ourselves, how much we have criticized ourselves, how much potential we have left on the table because it wasn't noticed. And the traits that girls have are very different than the boys. The boys are very physical, and they're very disruptive, you know. And so like my son has it, my son and my daughter both have it, and they couldn't be more different. And he is exactly what people think of when they think of ADHD. You know, I started getting calls about energy issues and things like that when he was in the third grade. And if I had not fought to get her evaluated, she still would not be, because the school was like, we don't see anything. I'm like, how do you not see this? But for girls, it tends to be much more internalized, and our traits tend to be seen more as character flaws versus signs that you could have ADHD.
Whoa.
So,
Can you give us a couple of examples of these character flaws?
sure. Um, she's so forgetful, so careless. She's always losing things. You know, she just needs to, just pay more attention. She's so chatty. She's a chatty Cathy. She's always daydreaming, things like that.
Mm.
So because of those things, unless you're the chatty Cathy one, which is more of the combined type, um, you are not disrupting the class the way the boys are. And I had heard this on a podcast, and I thought it was very well put. This woman said, when boys start to show signs, the teachers know it almost immediately. The parents tend to know it. The doctors tend to know it. And they immediately go, this boy has ADHD. More than likely, we need to help him.
Whoa.
With girls, when we are showing signs of it, as I said, ours are seen as character flaws, and we're told you need to fix that.
Oh, goodness gracious. Makes me think about the pink tax, but that's another thing entirely. Let me see what
Oh
this
yeah.
comment is. Eugenie, my daughter and sister have a diagnosis. My daughter was first, then me, and my sister. I was compliant, agreeable, and just felt lost, unworthy, accused of having verbal diarrhea. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Sharing is one of our traits. Yes.
Sorry? Oversharing.
Oversharing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I am aware of that one because of the conversations I've had with you and Tig, who's one of our members here. I was compliant, agreeable, and just felt lost and unworthy. Yeah, that's so interesting. So, can we talk about the oversharing? Oh,
Mhm.
Yeah, what can you say about that? Because it's quite interesting. I'm still wondering where I am in all of this. But yeah, go on, carry on.
So the oversharing tends to be, I don't really entirely understand why we do it, but I have been in conversations with people where I am literally thinking to myself, stop talking, just stop talking. And it just keeps coming out. And it's like she said, it's like verbal diarrhea. Like it just keeps coming out. And sometimes we don't want that pause in the conversation because we also struggle with social anxiety a lot. And so that pause makes us like really uncomfortable. So we're like, if we keep talking, the pause won't show up.
You know that one.
And, we also, though, we are actually really good storytellers. And sometimes our stories just have way too much detail. I mean, way too much detail.
I don't.
But it's just definitely a part of the dynamic of ADHD. Now, not everybody has that. Some people, my daughter tends to be actually quite quiet. She internalizes a lot of her stuff, which is why she was getting missed. But if you have more the combined type, so there's 3 types. There's the hyperactive impulsive, there's inattentive, and then there's combined, where you have enough of both traits that they can say you have combined type. So I'm combined type. My son is combined type. We're very different. My daughter's inattentive. And inattentive type is the type that tends to get missed the most because it's much more quiet and it's more subtle.
That's
So,
really interesting. You know what? I'm having these conversations then. So I saw a friend of mine the other day, and I've known him for a couple of decades now, and I was just explaining. So in this room, my studio, um, it there's some furniture. I actually have someone coming round tomorrow to help me move the furniture in. So I got given a new desk, and it's there, and I want it to be here, but I just get stuck. um,
yeah.
what was so nice the other day, I saw my friend. I don't see him very often, and I was able to say, now that I know myself, I call it freeze. I have a freeze response,
Mhm.
and certain things just make me freeze, and I just can't move beyond them unless someone holds my hand. And that's what
Mhm.
I've worked out. But to even have the dialogue, I really saw with my friend, there was a couple of things I described about myself. The other one is,
Mhm.
I don't know if this is an ADHD trait, but if I, if I don't know, but I'm pretty sure it's some kind of neurodiversity. But I don't recognize people very easily. So if I've
Mhm.
met somebody 6 times, that's roughly the number I need to store them. And what that is, and that's where my friend actually taught me the word hyperfocus. And the word
Mhm.
hyperfocus, right? When I meet somebody, I just see their earrings or their hat or their eyes if they're lucky, right? Because it's something that's
Mhm.
actually going to be there next time. But I hyper focus on that a feature, and then the next time I won't remember them because I didn't actually scan out and take a full picture. And now that I know that, I was watching The Voice, and I was looking at Will I Am, and I was like, he took off his glasses at one point. I was like, would I recognize you? Is that ADHD related?
Yeah, so there are so many like crossovers with things. So I also struggle with eye contact. And I thought that was just an autism thing. And I have never been diagnosed with autism. And in my assessment, they didn't feel that I had that. But now that the more I'm learning, the more they're saying that eye contact, or that struggle to do that, is also on its own an ADHD thing. It doesn't have to be autism related. There are a lot of things where there's a lot of crossover, and so and ADHD and autism is also considered a neurodiverse condition. So yes, I am in the same boat. I struggle to make eye contact with people initially. I will forget names the second you tell me. And the hyper focus is such an interesting thing because everyone thinks that ADHD is that we have a lack of attention. It's really like the most horribly named condition out there because none of it's really true.
Yeah.
So it's not that we have a deficit of attention. We actually want to pay attention to everything. We struggle to regulate where our attention goes. And so with that, there's also emotional dysregulation as well. So for people who are often called, oh, you're too sensitive or you overreact to things, that is part of it. And so, for example, you might be trying to study for a test, but your brain's hearing that clock ticking. And that's where your focus is going. And that's why you can't study on this, right? So the hyperfocus can be a bad thing, like that would be the bad hyperfocus. At the same time, due to a lot of the things that, like I talked about when you came on that day, there are things that you can do to help keep you focused, so that your hyper focus is on the good stuff, right? So it's not you scrolling through Facebook mindlessly. It's you're actually working on your website or working on your thing for work or your homework or whatever it is. So it really is about learning the right kind of skills and hacks that work for your brain. And everyone with ADHD is different. Like you're never going to find somebody who is exactly like you. And which is so interesting because we do have a lot of common traits, but how it impacts you is different for a lot of people. And so like sound is not necessarily a huge thing for me. But at the same time, if I'm watching a show on television, for example, I am always reading their lips. I'm always reading their lips, or I like it when there are subtitles because it helps me stay focused. And so I get less distracted by sounds if I have those components as well as whatever's on the television. And so it's such an interesting thing that, I go, oh gosh, when I learned that was a pretty common thing with people with ADHD, I'm like, that explains that. Cause I've always wondered, I'm like, why do I have lips? I can hear, like, it's not one of these things where I'm not, hard of hearing or anything like that. And yet I really feel drawn to having those things to pay attention.
That's so interesting. My daughter does subtitles. It really annoys me, but when I went on your masterclass the other day, the third day of the workshop with all the hacks, I saw a few and I thought, oh my gosh, my daughter does that and does that, and she has definite neurodiversity traits. I acknowledge you, Eugenie, for saying ADHD can live with autism too. I mean, yeah, there is definitely an overlap, right?
Oh yeah, my son has both. My son was diagnosed with autism when he was 3. And and I remember at the end of 2nd grade, looking at him and going, I feel like we're dealing with something else, because he was presenting with things that were not typical for autism. And I thought, well, I don't know, maybe every 8-year-old boy has the attention span of a gnat. I don't know. And then by 3rd grade, I started to get the phone calls and I was still in denial about it. And then finally in 4th grade, we finally got him assessed and they were like, yeah.
There's so many questions and so many things. One of the things that when I gig, right, I like song requests. Yeah. So I used to say I have a terrible memory, but now I say I have a goldfish memory. But like if somebody asks me for a song request, if I don't write it down right then, in less than a minute, I can completely forget what that is. And it's great because I have my mobile phone. When I'm singing, I have one device, my iPad, where I put the backing tracks play, and I have my iPhone just above for song requests. So as soon as somebody asks me, and if I wander off and ask someone, I bring my phone and write it down because I might have forgotten by the time I get back. But it's.
Oh, totally. And becoming a Mac person, an Apple person, has been like absolutely transformative for me. My husband was like, really? Because he is not a Mac fan. And I was like, no, I really want to get this. And so I have a MacBook Pro, I have an iPhone, and I have an Apple Watch. And the Apple Watch has just been like, I don't even worry about losing my phone anymore because I know I can just ping it and I'll find it eventually because I always lose my phone. But it's also like my reminders come up on my watch. So if I don't have my phone with me or I'm not in front of my computer, it will remind me. But like I said on that masterclass, I also have learned, though, do not mark it as complete until it is actually complete. because way too often I'll be like in the middle of something and be like, okay, yeah, I'll get to that in just a second. Let me just finish this one sentence that I'm typing. And in that time, I will long forget that the thing that I just said I had done that I didn't do. So
Yes,
yeah, so technology can be incredibly helpful.
yes. I upset a friend because um, they but sent me, there were two separate occasions they sent me quite heartfelt messages on a one of those apps with audio, and I'd started to listen, and then I was like, because I sometimes I just can't do things unless I can give them my undivided attention, and you know what I mean. And so it's like I'll put that aside and I'll do it later, but because I'd started to listen, it wasn't the color of unread messages. And so two times I'd done that to them, and that really hurt their feelings.
Oh yeah.
And now I know myself. I can I could even say right to that person, I've just started listening to this message. If I don't respond, can you just remind me again? And I have one friend I've noticed, and she says, I can see the message is still blue from like 3 days ago. And I'm like, oh, thank you. And
Yes.
but when we have a dialogue, when we know ourselves, and you know, for the whole free your true voice thing, for me, it's like I can, as soon as I start to uh, know me, I can
Mhm.
explain me to Emmy. It's better for my relationships.
It's
Ah,
yes. And the thing is that what I hear a lot from clients, and I noticed it as well, is like they get the diagnosis and then they go, I feel like my ADHD's gotten worse since I got the diagnosis.
mm,
And I'm like, no, you're just not masking it as much. Because girls, let's face it, women are taught to mask from like conception, right? Hide the things about you that are not socially acceptable. And with ADHD, we hide so much of who we really are, sometimes even from ourselves. And so when you get that diagnosis and you go, okay, this is a real thing, you start to go, I don't want to hide this anymore, and you start to ask for help. And I always encourage people to ask for help because we also tend to be people who don't ask for help, especially before a diagnosis, because we're embarrassed. There are things that we need help with that somebody who's neurotypical may not. And so when you start to become more comfortable with that, I'm the same way now. Every time my husband says, hey, can you pick this up at the store? I'm like, text it to me.
yes,
And
that's
then I don't look at it
me
until
too.
I get there. And I thankfully do remember to look at it, but I have a reminder that I set for myself that says, look at Jerry's text when I get to the grocery store, because I sometimes will forget. But if you just tell me, I will forget something. I have gone to like Target to get something and come home with like half the store except for the thing I went there to buy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And he's like, I just needed the one thing. And I'm like, you didn't text it to me.
I
So
totally know. If your name's not
yeah.
down, you're not coming in. That's like, yeah, I have that with shopping. I sometimes sing to myself, when I'm in the shopping in the supermarket or whatever. I mean, because I have got my phone and I have got the list. But say if I left the phone at home and I'm like, oh no, I'm obviously not going to buy what I came here for. But if it does come into my head, I might start singing, strawberries, bananas, and apples and then I get to the bananas and then I'm strawberries and apples, and then I get to the last one and that I have
That's a
to
good way to do it.
yeah, that works for me. And even like going upstairs and what I came upstairs for, how many times you go up to, oh God, what did I go upstairs for?
Oh,
And so that
so
I start to
often.
sing things as well to myself to remind myself. But
Yeah.
what comes up for me is, because we're in our Free Your True Voice group, and you talked
Hmm.
about the difficulty of getting your diagnosis, and how you went. So I think this need to be assertive sometimes that I witness with all the people that I'm working with or interact with who want to free their voice in some way, including myself.
Hmm.
It's like having the courage to ask for help. I remember my mum, she died of cancer, right? She, she, um, she was feeling ill and she went to the doctor and the doctor dismissed her. And one day she rang me up and said, Ellie, I feel so bad. I said, Mum, go down to the doctor and cry and do not go until he lets you see her. And that's when she it was, then 6 months later she died of cancer. But that would, I don't know if she'd have gone like a week before, it wouldn't probably have made a difference. But the point is, like, to assert yourself with the medical practitioner. Now you're in the States, I'm in England. So I would have thought that it might be different, but it sounds like it's not. So what can you
Yeah,
suggest? What have you observed?
so here, and it's mostly since COVID, because so many women discovered during COVID, when they were suddenly trapped home with their kids and trying to work and trying to, help their kids get on Zoom and do the laundry, like all of a sudden everything got way so much harder. And so a whole bunch of people started to go in to get assessed. And so there just aren't enough therapists and psychiatrists, because not every therapist can diagnose you. They usually want you to go to a psychiatrist. And so because it's literally months to a year wait list. I've heard that in the UK it's even longer. I was listening to a podcast, and she was talking to somebody who was in Ireland, and they said it was like 2 years. And I
Yeah,
was
two
like, oh
years.
my gosh. And so I actually, when I finally said, okay, I'm going to do this, I was in the same boat. I ended up going through an online company to do it, because I was like, I'm not waiting for this. I researched a bunch of them. And the one that I went with because, first of all, they got great reviews, but also they didn't do medication at that time in my state. And so I thought, okay, they're not going to have the incentive to diagnose me if I don't really have it, because they're not going to make extra money off of me.
Oh yeah, good point. Good point.
And so it turns out, if they do it right, there is a complete separation between the two. So there should be somebody who does the assessment, and then there's a completely different person. If you decide to go through medication through one of these online companies, there's a separate prescriber who will ask you a completely different set of questions to basically double check to see if this is something that you need. Now I can't speak for all companies, but I just know the ones that I have worked with have been really great about it. But I did the same thing with medication, because that company didn't do medication. And when I finally decided, I'm like, oh, crap, now what am I going to do? And I just, so I found a different company, and, it was great. Now here in the States, I don't know about these online companies like Cerebral, et cetera, they're now not doing stimulant medication anymore as of next month. So when they made that announcement, my general practitioner, my regular doctor, she said, I can take that over for you. I just didn't want to be because she doesn't know enough about the medication to prescribe for me. So I was thankful she was honest about that, but she was fine taking it over once I had a set regimen for it.
Okay, so oh God, there's loads coming up now again. So first of all, I thought everyone had to pay for healthcare in America, and then I thought that because you were paying, you'd get a faster service. Is that not the truth? Because when we pay here, which is what my friend did to get her diagnosis, she got it faster. She paid, but that you just have to pay, and you still have to wait. Maybe not as long as us, but still.
Yeah, our healthcare system here is messed up. It's just so messed up.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. And they charge a lot. And so for a lot of people, getting diagnosed is very cost prohibitive.
Yes,
And
here too.
but I really do feel it's important to get the assessment, especially if they can do like a neuropsych exam, because when they do those, they can also screen for other things, because there are things that will present very often like ADHD, but isn't ADHD. So if, for example, if you have a sleep disorder and you're not getting good restful sleep, and it has nothing to do with ADHD, you're still going to have some of those same symptoms: forgetfulness, losing things, not being able to pay attention during conversations, things like that. So I do think it is important to get the assessment if you can. But I know that the reality is that for some people, here, to get my daughter assessed, it was like $3,500. And,
Wow.
I mean, we did a payment plan. We did it because she had to get it done, but we have a huge deductible, because again, healthcare in this country is really screwed up. So, and so for a lot of people, they're like, I don't have the money for that.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
so it's really a shame, because when you get the other reason that I think it's important to get the assessment is because, and I think I don't know if for sure that you have this in the UK, but here in the States, it is considered a disability and you can ask for accommodations, whether it's for a job, for school, for all of that. And that can make the difference between you keeping your job or you having to go look for another one. And people with ADHD tend to not make as much money as people who don't have it. And it's because we tend to change jobs a lot because we don't fit the typical mold.
Now, I have okay, so I want to know oh look, Eugenia's commented, I'm also dyslexic because short-term working memory is a thing. So yeah, I was thinking about Eugenia and I can't remember what I was going to say. Um, um, so oh yeah, because Eugenie, I was wondering how long you took to get a diagnosis and how much you paid. And if you would like to share, that would be really interesting. If you had to pay, how long you had to wait, and you mentioned your daughter, I would be interested to know about that. And for you, Jorie, you said this stimulant medication is no longer being. Tell me about what stimulant medication and what other medication is there, and why is it not?
So stimulant medication, like most people know, like Adderall, right? Or Ritalin. Those are the two most well-known ones. And so what they know is that part of what causes ADHD is that we have our reticular activating system in our brain is understimulated. And we also do not make enough dopamine naturally. And so what they have found is that with stimulant medication, it actually brings those levels up to where a neurotypical person is, or at least as close to it as they're going to get. And why that's important is because dopamine then converts into norepinephrine, or noradrenaline is another word for it. That is what hits the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is where all of our executive functioning happens, or most of it. So organization, prioritization, time management. So time blindness is a really big thing in ADHD, people who are chronically late all the time, because we literally can't feel time passing. We cannot like our brains just don't understand that concept very well. And all of that's in the prefrontal cortex. So what they have found is that the stimulant medication brings those levels up. It creates more dopamine so that people can do the thing, so to speak. They get motivation because dopamine is the motivation hormone, basically. It's the thing that gets you to do the thing, even if you don't want to do the thing, right?
Right.
So the stimulant medication helps with that. There are non-stimulant medications as well that do help for some people, but overwhelmingly, the research has shown that if you have ADHD, stimulant medication with therapy, you really should try to have both, is the best combination. Some people can't do stimulant medication. They may have a heart issue, except for some people, it increases their anxiety. There are a lot of reasons why some people just simply can't. Some people just don't want to. They want to just live, they want to live more naturally, etc. So the other ways that you can naturally increase dopamine is, for example, intensive cardio, weight training. Those are two things that can up your dopamine level. So my son doesn't want to take his medication anymore. He doesn't like how he feels. He's like, I don't get to be as impulsive as I want to be. I'm like, yeah, dude, that's why you're on it. We need you to go to school and not be getting calls from the principal. But I said, look, if you are willing to do what you need to do, we'll get you like a bike or something, a stationary bike, so you can get up in the morning and go and ride that. And then he has gym in the middle of the day, so he'll get more dopamine there, and it might be enough to get him through. We only medicate him for school. So there are options, but because here stimulant medication is I can't remember what they call it now. There's a whole lot of regulation on it. So like I can only get a month's worth at a time.
Yeah, because I think I heard about some teenagers selling Adderall. Is that right?
Yeah. So they're trying to prevent that. So so you can only get it 30 days at a time. And they can only call in 3 months worth at a time. And then you have to do what's called a med check, and you have to go in and talk to your doctor, and they will weigh you, and they'll, ask you a lot of questions just to make sure that, that you're doing okay on it. For people who don't have ADHD, stimulant medication can be incredibly addictive.
Right.
For people who do have ADHD, it just impacts us completely differently. We just don't have that. Like half of us forget to take it half the time. So I'm like I have an afternoon dose that I have to have a reminder on my phone to take. So like,
Yeah.
um,
But were you saying they were stopping that ability to?
oh, that is for online therapy companies. So like Cerebral,
Right.
Done,
Yeah, yeah,
some
yeah.
of those, they can still prescribe, I think, the non-stimulant medications, but they can't do the stimulant medications anymore. I think because
Of the drug addict
people,
people.
yeah, I think I have no idea really. I think they're just trying to make sure that it doesn't become a problem. If because you can't see the person physically for the med check,
Yeah, yeah,
so like
yeah.
I would go, I go every time I'm supposed to go. But they just all they can do is ask questions and they can kind of just go by what you look like in the camera, right? So
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah,
yeah.
okay. So listen, Eugenie commented because I asked her, and she said, I got told to be diagnosed by my daughter's mental health team and got referred to a doctor by them as I was going through cancer treatment, which was treated
Mm.
as an urgent family need. I'm so glad that you did. And Eugenie says exercise is her medicine and also an omega-3 rich diet. Have you looked in?
Yes. Yes, I've heard that as well. And I've actually just started doing that myself, is taking more omegas and vitamin D. Both of them are really great for brain health. So yes, absolutely. That's a really good point.
I love the idea of doing some cardiovascular, but then it makes me think my dad and my brother were seriously into weight training, and I'm wondering if, like, my brother was also had that diagnosis and the dyslexia thing as well. Eugenie said that she's dyslexic, and my daughter has dyslexia. She has. Yes, anxiety. She has, I mean, I'm just thinking, gosh, I wonder if like it would actually work for her to have a diagnosis and oh, it's just so many things that it's just amazing. So that, but we already been here for a while, so I'd like to
I could
talk.
talk about this forever, so I'll let you like stop this because I could just go on forever.
Oh God, I really could.
I do want to say one more thing. Anxiety and depression are two very common side effects of untreated ADHD. And women overwhelmingly are diagnosed with those two first before ADHD even becomes part of the conversation. And so they're taking antidepressants and they're taking anti-anxiety and wondering why they're not really working. And it's because it's not working on the source of the problem.
Yes.
When you are, so when you were talking about how you couldn't get yourself to do, like to move the table, right? You needed somebody to kind of hold your hand. It's called ADHD paralysis.
Yes.
And
I know
so
that.
it's
Yeah.
overwhelm for whatever reason. And so let's say you have to do the thing and you're sitting there torturing yourself and you're on the couch and flipping through the phone and going in your head, you're just like, I need to do the thing. Why can't I do the thing? Just go do the thing. So you're having all this anxiety about it. And then of course the person, if you're living with somebody, they just see you looking through your phone and they just think you're being lazy, which of course we've already labeled ourselves. And you're probably calling yourself that too. And then that's when depression kicks in because you're just like, God, I'm such a loser. I can't do anything. And so it's this horrible vicious circle. And for me, when I did start the meds, I noticed a difference in both of those immediately. I couldn't believe the difference. I had no idea they had been related. And I had never been officially diagnosed with depression or anxiety. I'd always had this low grade depression that I never understood. And it was just low enough that I didn't feel I needed to go to the doctor about it. And I just considered myself an anxious person. Again, cause. And so again, if so for people who choose to do the exercise route, et cetera, same thing. When you get those endorphins up, when you get that dopamine up, you start doing things, it lowers your depression rate and it helps you to decrease anxiety. So, I tell people all the time, especially if they're women and they've been diagnosed with both of those things and they're still experiencing the same things that I've been talking about, I'm like, go back to your doctor and ask to get assessed for ADHD.
Do you know what?
And
This feels really important to me. I just read what Eugenie said. Had that paralysis for 30 years about releasing my own music and have helped other people release theirs. I get it. That makes me think about my clients as well. I mean, now I've got this widened mind of what this experience is. I have one client that I'm excited about potentially working with, who I could see that this could be, yeah, I could see that. Oh gosh. Anyway, so my daughter, now you've spoken, like, so Jorie, you shared on your Facebook group this paralysis one. It was a TikTok of a paralysis. And I just went up to my daughter and I said, oh my gosh, this looks like you. And she's on antidepressants. She has anxiety and dyslexia. And when I listened to you just now talking, I was like, oh my God, I've got to get her assessed. Because if she's on the wrong medication, and she gets, so the paralysis, I experienced this summer holiday while she was here, that she can't even reach for the bottle of water that's beside her when she gets this paralysis, but she'll be on her iPad watching movies or something, but she can't reach for the water, can't go and brush her teeth. And there's so many things that I'm picking up from you that I'm like, this girl needs to get an assessment, you know. Oh my, because if she's on the wrong medication and then she's feeling suicidal, she does a lot, and now she's got to go back into university. But if she was in, and when you said about the functions of the brain and the dopamine affecting the frontal lobe, and that makes me think, oh my gosh, because that could so help her with her studies if that's what is blocking her from being able to. Oh my, I'm so grateful for this conversation.
Yeah, and so I want to be clear. So anybody who's on antidepressants, don't go off your antidepressants. That's not healthy either. That's something you got to like wean yourself off of. Go talk to your doctor and ask them to get assessed for ADHD. And I will send this to you, Alison. I have a form that people can fill out, because sometimes when you try to talk to your doctor about it, it feels like mush coming out of your mouth. That's what it was like for me, because I was like, how do I explain this? And I was like, well, I'm distracted a lot, and I lose things all the time. Like, I just felt stupid telling them. This form is for adult assessment of ADHD, and you can hand it to your doctor, even though it's an American form. I'm sure it'll still give them the information that they need. And it will help them understand better what you're experiencing. And it's very well thought out. So I will give it to you so you can post it in your group. It's very helpful for people when they're going in, so that they don't feel like they have to explain everything, because it's so hard to explain to people, especially if they don't have it.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
Sorry, that's
And so I would be really happy to for you to promote your work here in this space. So we spoke about the fact that you have a program that you're starting right now, but it's not UK friendly, right?
The time is not UK friendly, but I am happy to create a UK friendly time for it. So I have a program called Connecting the Dots. And it is for women with ADHD, in particular women who were fairly new to their diagnosis, where it helps them to connect the dots from who they spent their life thinking that they were, to then creating a life based on who they know they are now with their ADHD, so they can start living up to their full potential. It's a 6-month group program, and it was what I was able to create, like I said, where it was a more streamlined way of kind of figuring out who you are, and what you really want, and learning how to create support systems for yourself in your life, so that you can start, having people around you that are supportive of you as well. But just so that you know who you are and you can feel really confident about that. And so one of the components of it is a program that I'm certified to facilitate called Lifebook. Lifebook itself is not made for people with ADHD. I have ADHD-ified it, so to speak. So when we're creating strategies for about, okay, is this something that's going to work for your brain? And it's all about, how is this going to work for your brain? And making sure that you are setting yourself up for success, as opposed to creating goals that are not based on what your brain can do. But you have to learn what your brain can do first, and that's kind of a big component of the program.
Here we go. Can you help one with ADD, not ADHD? Funny that you asked that, Faith, because Faith, welcome. Because I wondered if what the difference is between those two.
Okay, so that's a very good question. So it used to be ADD, attention deficit disorder, and then I think it was like 1988 they introduced ADHD, which is where they introduced the hyperactive aspect of it. And then somewhere along the line they decided, okay, we're going to call everything ADHD with those three presentations. So people who were ADD are usually the inattentive presentation.
That's what I figured when I was listening to you say those three categories. The inattentive doesn't sound any H at all. So yeah, okay. So now they just use that one umbrella thing. Great. Yeah. So tell me, so your program, well, Faith's in Canada as well, which is interesting. So your program in a group, I came to I'm going to be honest here, because I'm practicing that. When I was in your group, there was one woman who was sharing a lot, and I was thinking, oh gosh, if it was a group program, if I was having all these oversharers, I don't know what is I don't know if I could handle it. What how does it look?
Yeah, so the group, usually we try to keep to 10-ish, maybe a little more. Mm-hmm. The guidelines are established up front. Everybody, we want everyone to be able to share. If I have to cut you off, don't take it personally. Even when I do, if somebody makes a call with me because they want more information on it, I'm upfront about that at that point as well. For time's sake, I may have to cut you off because let's be honest, we tend to talk too much, and everyone gets it. They're like, oh yeah, I totally know, it's fine. So that's basically, that's one of my roles as a facilitator, is not just a coach, but it's also to be like, okay, we need to wrap this up. We got other people to talk. So
how does that work? Is there like a group call? Is it once a month?
Yeah, so it's on Zoom. Yeah, it's on Zoom. And and so we start off every session. So in the life book portion of it, there's a video that everyone watches, and there's homework that they do that's part of that. And so, we start off talking, okay, so, who had some breakthroughs this time, and who's struggling with something, who wants to share, something that they were able to work through. And then we can start focusing. Usually the challenges that people are having with it are usually something dealing with their ADHD, right? They couldn't get started. They couldn't even watch the video, for example, or they couldn't get themselves to write out the things that they wanted because they didn't know what to say, and they got really anxious. And so they said, oh, I'll do it later. Those are the kinds of things that tend to crop up. And so that's what we work through, because they're not the only one in the group that deals with that. And so the reason I really like doing it as a group, I do have some people who do it individually, and it works fine with that too. But in the group aspect of it, you just have more people because most of us have spent most of our lives feeling really alone. The group aspect, first of all, validates who you are. You're with people who get you. You are with people who are going to completely understand when you say, I couldn't do the thing. Right? They're going to get it, and they're going to be supportive. And when other people are sharing, you never know who is really going to get a nugget from you. And so we've all had these experiences. We all have different hacks and tricks that have worked for us. And so it's just a really great community for people then to learn from each other, but do it in an organized way. And
how often do you meet? How
Once
often?
a week.
Once a week?
Yep. Once a week.
Quite. Faith has a question. Any support or suggestions for mothers of kids with ADHD who also have ADHD? Well, you are one of those, right?
I am one of them. First of all, give yourself a lot of grace. I can't tell you how many times I have lost my shit with my kids, and I know what's going on. And it is, so you've got to that's the first thing I say, give yourself some grace. The same hacks and tricks that work for you will very likely also work for your kids. So for example, today in my Facebook group, I do a live every Tuesday as well. And I try to talk about something that is going to be educational or that people can use. And so today I talked about having an evening routine, for example. So if you have kids that really struggle to get up in the morning, because a lot of people with ADHD are not morning people, make sure that they have all of their stuff ready the night before. And the tricky part when you have ADHD is that sometimes you forget to have them do it, right? And until it's an established routine, that's where it tends to get a little fuzzy. And that's been a problem for me. So that's where reminders on your phone, if you have an Alexa, putting that on there, like, Alexa, everybody get your bags ready for tomorrow, you know, like at a certain time every day. And those are things that will help to establish the routine. Have the bags at the front door, have your keys with your bag. So those are just like one less thing for everybody to have to think about. And you don't have to do it all at once. We also tend to do that when we get really excited about this stuff. And this is a hyper focus thing, right? We're really excited and we want to get it all figured out. And we try to add too many new things at once. And then we get burned out and then we don't do any of it. So create one habit first, right? So for example, like I said, if you have kids that have trouble getting up in the morning, have them have their stuff ready the night before. Just start with that. And remind yourself that I talked about this in the masterclass. Kids with ADHD are told 20,000 more negative comments by the age of 12 than kids without ADHD. And hi, my son just happened. And so when I heard that, I felt like I got punched in the gut. And I know that I have not always been patient with my kids. And like I said, and then when I got my own diagnosis, I kind of went, okay, my own emotional regulation is a problem because that's part of ADHD. So work on yourself as much as you can to get your own, figure out how ADHD impacts you, figure out how you tend to, like, what your triggers are in terms of, like, if you are really impatient with your kids, like, what's the thing that really gets you? Like, for me, it's time. Like, if my kids are going to be late, I get super stressed out about it. And then no one's happy. So that's when you go, okay, so what is one thing I could do today that is going to make that part easier tomorrow? And then put as many reminders as you need. Put it on Alexa, put it on your phone, put it on wherever. Seriously, like as many as you need to. And there is no judgment as far as I'm concerned. I have at least 3 reminders for every appointment I have.
Yeah, my daughter has a really noisy alarms that get on my nerves, but she needs them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see, and so then you encourage your children to do. I've encouraged my son to do reminders, like I do for doing his chores or whatever it is. So yeah, I hear that. Now, what about your husband? The people in your love who have to adapt to your way. To how do I don't know? Tell me a story or.
So my husband does not have ADHD. He's got little hints of it here and there. It's all over his family, but he doesn't really have it. He's more OCD. So he lives with 3 people who don't see their messes and he sees all of them. So you can imagine how frustrating that is for him. He gets very anxious when there's clutter and when there are, how we have our little piles. Because if we put them somewhere, we will forget about it.
Doom
so
didn't organize, only moved, and I've got that one.
Yeah, our doom piles.
That one there.
Yeah. So you move a pile from one side to the other. But one of the things that used to drive him really crazy was the fact that, so another weird sign about ADHD is if you can walk into a room and find random cabinet doors and drawers open. And I've been like that my entire life. I didn't even think about it. And it would drive him crazy. He's like, just shut the cabinet doors. And I'm like, I don't even realize I'm leaving them open. And he was really taking it personally, like I was doing it on purpose. And I was like, dude, like, I'm not doing it on purpose. And, I finally kind of had to say, I have so much bandwidth in a day. And if that's what you want me to use it on, I guess I'll figure it out. But, whatever. eventually, I mean, we've been married for 15 years. I finally kind of figured out, okay, I'm much better about it. But now my kids do it. So I'm like, Jerry, I think you're, because I said, I don't mind them being open. I go to the cabinet. I already know what's there because the cabinets are open. I can see them. So it doesn't bother me. But yeah, so it's little things like that. He's been really good since my diagnosis about listening to me when I'm trying to educate him on like things with the kids, why they're, behaving a certain way, or why they don't do certain things or do certain things, why I do certain things. It's really important to have the people in your life, even if they don't have ADHD themselves, to have them support you however they can, whether it's just getting more educated. In my Facebook group, for example, I have several people on there who are parents. They don't have it themselves, but they are parents of kids who have it, or they have friends who have it, and they're just trying to learn new ways to be supportive of that person, which I can't tell you how much I love that. I just, it makes me want to cry. It's so moving to me. So it's really important to make sure you are surrounded with people who are going to be supportive and who aren't going to get upset because you forget something. They understand that, there are certain things that, like my husband, if I forget to do something, my husband will say, I knew I should have reminded you and I didn't do it. You know what I mean? So it's not suddenly put on me, you forgot it, like, dude, this is who I am. Like, like,
Yeah, that's it.
so,
Yeah. I like to say this is how I'm drawn. Like
yeah,
Jessica Rabbit says in
I
the,
love that.
yeah, and yeah, it's good to know some things you just can't change. You can work around. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I've really enjoyed this conversation. We've done a whole hour and it was very easy. We could have gone through loads and loads and loads. If you
I
had
know.
one thing more to say to my people here now, everyone is freeing their true voice in some way. So there's something either that they might have musical tendencies, they might want to speak, they might just want to speak up for themselves. They might want to, they just know that they're holding back their sort of liberation, and it comes in the form of sound in some way.
Mhm.
I wonder what would be your last words.
Hmm. Um, you are not something to be fixed. You are perfect the way you are.
Mm, mm, mm. And when we know that, when we really know that, then we can express ourselves in that perfection. It just to be able to feel okay with how we are, and the self-talk is huge. So when we
That's a
want to
big
free our
part
true
of,
voice,
yeah.
we want to free our true voice to ourselves. We don't necessarily have to even do it to anyone else. Before we do it to ourselves, we can start to admit, this is me, this is how I am, this is who I am. I'm going
And
to
it's
allow you
okay.
to
I'm
be
not
that.
broken.
Yeah.
So many of us walk around thinking we're broken and trying to fix things. And we're always trying to fix the things that are our challenges instead of focusing on the things and strengthening the things that are our strengths. And, especially when we first get that diagnosis, we tend to focus on all the bad, but we are one of the most persistent, resilient, creative, storytelling, entrepreneurial group of people you will ever find on the planet.
I love that. I love that.
So I am not all about ADHD is a superpower. It has its moments and it has moments where it's not so great. Acknowledge both, but also don't only focus on the bad, because there's so much that we do bring to the world, but you have
Yes.
to free your voice in order to do that. So,
Yes. Yes. I'm just seeing where the comments are. There was one more comment and I accidentally clicked one. I clicked something and now I can't find the comment. Oh, there it is. It's popped back in again. Thank you kindly, Facebook. Now, let me move this box out of the way. Here we go. And do you work with individual women? Faith Amore says.
mhm,
Fascinating, says Elaine. Thank you. So
you're
you do.
welcome.
You mentioned that you do work with individual women, didn't you, Jorie?
Yep.
So why don't we put your details in the comments on the Facebook group? Now, are you able to access that? Or
I'm gonna try here really quickly. I am in the process of putting in a new scheduling system. So some of my stuff is not up yet on the website.
But what's the website? Say it out loud as well, because
the website is joriehoulihan.com. So JORIEHOULIHAN.com.
So somebody could get onto your website and then communicate with you about what
Yes, at the very least. I'm hoping to have everything up within the next couple of days. But the scheduling thing I was using was just terrible. And so I finally found one that works way better. But I had to take some things off the site. So
and also I want to put the link, if you can go on the Facebook comment. If not, you can just share it in the Zoom chat. You could share your Facebook group with us, because I mean, just the little bit I've tapped into there has been so useful to me. If you put it in the group,
watch the live video. Here we are.
Facebook group with us, because I mean, oh yeah, that's what happens when you.
Oh yeah, Faith put it in, so
I can hear your Faith. Thank you, darling.
Oh yeah, put it in. So
I can hear your Faith. Thank you, darling. I can now hear you on the Facebook group. You have to silence it.
Yeah. Okay. I just took myself out. I'm like, I think it'll just be easier if I'm not in there.
Okay. So then just share on the chat your Facebook group, how someone could join that.
Oh, the Facebook group. Yeah. So let me put that in.
You put in the chat. I'll copy and paste it into the comment.
1 second. Let me pull it up here.
Yeah, these Facebook groups are super useful. It's such a wonderful thing, and
it really is.
It made me come in. It made me come in to find out more about you. There we go. I've got it. So I'm going to now copy and paste that into I can't talk. Yeah, into the comments. There we go. Did it. Yeah, awesome. Wicked. Well, look, thank you so much for guesting.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking me. This has been such a privilege. And, like I said, I love talking about this. I love educating people on it. I want people to be their authentic selves and to know that they're not broken, to know that they are perfect the way they are. Their brains just work differently. That's all.
That's it. And I would like to thank Faith for joining us, and Eugenie. I think it's Eugenie.
Yes, thank you guys for being here. I hope you got a lot out of it.
Yeah, it's been wonderful to have. And then also Tig mentioned that she's at the theatre tonight and she's going to watch it later. I'm sure she's going to enjoy it. And so thank you.
Thank you very much. This has been a pleasure. I was a bit
tired at the beginning, and now I'm high. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. And good night. And bye-bye, everybody.
Night.